I want to thank everybody for being here. We officially rescue the U.S. auto industry from destruction by terminating the California electric vehicle mandate once and for all.
That sounds good. What's the story behind this? California's an insane place. But anyway, let's ask Marc. I don't know. Joining me now, Marc Morano, executive editor of ClimateDepot.com. What is this California electric vehicle mandate that Trump's doing away with? Marc, what's going on?
This is huge. There's no other way to put it. This is the biggest blow against the forces of the Great Reset that Donald Trump may have done since he's been elected. This is huge. And why this is huge is for decades, with an exemption under the Clean Air Act, California has been able to set their own environmental policy. We have been held hostage, the United States of America, by whatever California wanted to do. Because if they decided that they wanted low emissions cars, they wanted to ban gas-powered cars, automakers, because about 11 other states follow what California does, about 40% of America was now under these dictates of California, which then forced automakers and other industries to kowtow to whatever California's strictest standards would be. And they were literally wacko standards. I mean, we now have, we now had California enact this car ban by an executive order from Gavin Newsom. And then it went over to unelected bureaucrats at the California Air Resources Board. And then 11 states followed just because they were trigger laws set in by Democratic governors. And then the Biden EPA of unelected bureaucrats started implementing this. And by the way, all the automakers, generally all of them, supported this, thought it was a great idea. Why? Because they cashed in on tens of millions of dollars in subsidies and all the perks that they got. Stellantis would get money from the taxpayers and open up a plant for a few months and then close it, but keep the taxpayer money. It was all one of the biggest scams going. And by the way, the public, zero interest. I think it's less than 2% of cars, all electric vehicles are on the road, 7% of sales. A lot of those are people that have even 2 electric vehicles. In other words, they were forcing this down our throat based on an obscure provision and regulatory scheme from the Clean Air Act. And Donald Trump, not only did Donald Trump do this, but this is a rare case, Jesse, because the Republican Congress actually legislated this. This isn't the case of, oh, darn, another executive order that can be overturned in the first 2 weeks of Gavin Newsom's presidential term, theoretically in the future. This is actually law now because the Republican Congress did what it rarely does and followed through and actually made something happen. So we've now eliminated in the United States, now it's going to go to court cases and everything, but the idea of a gas-powered car ban by 2035, by 2040. And by the way, around the world, the same thing happened. Just like a COVID mandate, all of these restrictions happened without votes of democracy. They were decided on by unelected bureaucrats, by executive orders, by corporate government collusion. So this is a big day in America. And there's not a lot, you can't say too much hyperbolic about this because the hyperbole is true.
Yeah, Republicans did something in Congress.
They
I
did.
just don't
That's
even
the
know how to
headline.
live in this world, Marc. I don't even know. I don't even know how to respond to that. It's never happened before. Okay,
They took us out of the domain of East Germany and Cuba, which were previously known as the only countries to restrict our freedom of movement. You know, Cuba had the 1950s America's cars, and East Germany had the crappy East German Trabant, which essentially you had to be on a waiting list for decades to get. It was the only government-approved car you could buy in East Germany. And guess what? In Gavin Newsom's America, under this mandate, which the GOP Congress and Trump just overturned, the government was basically saying you could only buy one government-approved car, an all-electric vehicle. And by the way, corporate banks were saying at one point a couple years ago that they weren't going to give out loans to people buying gas-powered cars. The World Bank was going to stop financing automakers if they were going to continue to make gas-powered cars. And you have cities in Colorado and California announcing the banning of new gas stations to create gas shortages if you should have it. The fix was in. They wanted to get rid of private car ownership. CNN was promoting carbon passports. We are living in a different era right now. This is a phenomenal time, and we're only 6 months in. I hope he keeps this momentum going, particularly on the climate, energy, environment front. It has just been phenomenal. I will say one other thing. Lee Zeldin, who I was not that excited about as an original pick because I just didn't know much about him, deserves every award possible. He's the greatest administrator in the EPA's entire history. This is a man of courage. Both he and Trump have flipped the entire climate narrative. They openly talk now from the highest levels of government about the climate scam, climate cult, climate religion. That is probably even more important than the legislation because we've changed and shifted the culture. And now Americans, companies, corporations, we can now speak freely of how we've been scammed these many decades with all these climate claims.
Mark, is that why Politico is printing articles about how they've lost the climate culture war? Is it just, do they feel like they're on their heels? Because it feels to me like they're on their heels, but I don't want to be trapped in the Trump bubble, right? We're enjoying a Trump presidency, but it feel like not just domestically, but internationally, it feels like they're falling back.
I've been very critical of a lot of this stuff. His whole deal with Palantir, surveillance, and the idea of, this is going to go right in with the Great Reset and all this data collection and the idea of imposing UN Agenda 21. So there's a lot of problems with Trump and AI and the big tech conglomeration. I'm not the one who believes there's the good tech billionaires and the bad tech billionaires. To me, they're all bad, including a guy named EM initials. I won't say the name. But anyway, that's just to say I'm not a Trump sycophant when I say this. But Politico is acknowledging reality here. In Europe, they had to halt the Green New Deal. They had farmers protesting the climate net zero by throwing manure at the headquarters of Brussels and EU. And I've been to the Brussels EU headquarters. It's a perfect place to spew manure all over the place. The UN climate summit process is collapsing under its own weight. The last one I attended in Azerbaijan, falling apart. You have Argentina going the way of anti-net zero. You have all these European countries. You have Canada getting rid of zeroing down their carbon tax, facing reality. And then you have Donald Trump, whether it's EVs, whether it's all the power plants, whether it's unleashing American energy and getting rid of at least 60% of the subsidies that were passed in Inflation Reduction Act. Wish it were more. It may not be possible because a lot of the projects started. It becomes a legal battle. It becomes banks and financings already began. But Politico is recognizing this. This is a mainstream corporate organization, Politico. They're saying we lost the culture war on climate. They quote an Obama aide saying the left strategy on climate needs to be rethought. This was an easy strategy 10, 20 years ago, even pre-COVID, because all they had to do was say solar and wind are cheaper and it's going to power the world and we're going to have all this jobs and entrepreneurship and everything's going to be just unicorns and just a miracle. And then reality hit. We started implementing them. Europe started, Canada started, the United States. And we realized this was the intentional rationing of energy, our freedom of movement, and our abundant food supply. And once the public realized that, boom, they lost it. They lost the public. And now Politico is admitting that. There's no more. They can't come back now and try to scare us with more climate tipping points. They can't come back now and talk about the dangers of methane and cows when even their own studies show that the lab-grown meat pushed by Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates is 25 times or more harmful to the environment. So every bit of their jig has been exposed at this point, and Politico is just reporting on reality now.
That's beautiful. Mark, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.